What is going on, you guys? Super Rugby Round 12 is in the books. Here are the results. Some pretty tasty ones here. Some upsets, some permutations, some cats amongst the pigeons when it comes to the standings. We'll look at that at the end, but let's break down each game from the weekend, starting with one I want to get out of the way, which is Blues versus Force. Look, the Force are not a good touring team, so they probably went to Eden Park as underdogs. Everything about this game was pretty lackluster. It was a drizzly night in Auckland. Only about 6,000 Aucklanders showed up. Yes, the home team did get the W, a gritty defensive performance, a better performance at the breakdown, which was needed because Carlo Tizzano from the Force is one of the best loose forwards running around Australia, pushing for a Wallabies jersey. But you look at this result, even though it's a bit of a thumping, and it doesn't really inspire confidence that the Blues can kick on. Yes, they have a run home, including another match with Moana Pacifica, to stay in the top six come finals time. I just didn't see enough from this to think that even if they scrape into the top six, that they're really going to push on to the semifinals, to the grand final. What were the highlights? Dalton Papali'i was very good at the breakdown, very good around the park. Ricky Riccatelli provided some real punch at hooker. The pick and go was back. The rolling maul was back. All the stuff that made them really formidable up front last year was back. And they did defend well against a pretty willing Force team. But they still needed the injection of AJ Lamb off the bench in the second half. They still needed a bit of Bowden Barrett magic. It just still didn't feel like a cohesive performance from 1 through 23. So you'd have to give this a pass mark. They needed a win, but unconvincing stuff from the Blues. Let's move on to a game that I thoroughly enjoyed, emanating from Suva, where the Reds are 0-3. You just have to look at the picture. Does a picture tell 1,000 words or what? Look at the smiles on the faces of these boys. They got a big scalp. The Reds have been leading this competition at times, and they went over to that hard, dry track, and they were looking reasonably good in the first half. Now, Jock Campbell returned to the Reds last week. For me, he brings a lot of balance to the back three. He brings good distribution. He brings good penetration. I liked what I saw from him. So there were signs, really, that he could cut the Drua up if they started napping on defense. But the Drua brought a bit more sting in the forward pack, and I want to single out number 6, Wonga. His line breaking was phenomenal. This guy's long, he's rangy, he gets around the park. Believe he scored a try, certainly set up another with one of his incisions, and there was some sparkling champagne rugby from the Drua at home in Fiji. Now, not to be too reductive, but I did start thinking as this game wore on, that up front, the Reds were probably a bit of a tighter unit. If this game slowed down, if it became about the set piece, if it really came down to territory, who can camp out in the opposition 22 and just bulldoze over the line, if it's that kind of game, I got to give it to the Reds. However, if it stays open, if it becomes about who's the most inspired, if it becomes about offloads, keeping the ball alive, going coast to coast, then the Drua have a shot. Now, for a minute there in the second half, it looked like the Behemoths were going to win it. Jeffrey Tumunga Allen scored an important try. Nothing pretty, nothing flash. Basically barged over the line. And I'm thinking, oh, damn, this is going to be a win for the forwards. It's going to be a win for basic rugby 101. Might is right. Brawn over brains. Bang, bang, bang. You felt like the Reds had the better rolling maul. I'm just going to say it, kind of the more boring aspects of rugby, the Reds seem to be excelling in, but it wasn't to be in the 80th minute. The Drua scored a try. One of the loudest cheers you'll ever hear. I don't know how many people were there in Suva. I mean, a few thousand, I guess, but they were scattered around the grassy knolls. They were jumping up and down on the hills as Armstrong Ravua drop-kicked the conversion at the end. Just amazing stuff. Doesn't necessarily help them get into the playoffs, but man, sometimes you just need a win, and the Drua deserved it. They've been scrappy all season, and that's a big scalp. Like I said, the Reds have been leading this comp at times, so super happy for the home team there. But let's move on to one of the more fascinating games. Hurricanes at Sky Stadium against the Chiefs. Look at that result, 35-17. Did you pick that? Be honest. You might have picked the Hurricanes to win. Did you think that they would score more than twice as many points? I didn't. 20 points came from Balin Sullivan in midfield. He scored 4 tries. That was uplifting. What wasn't uplifting was Kini Naholo limping off with what looked like a pretty serious injury. Kini Naholo's eligible for the All Blacks, and he's been eating up the meters all season. He was so destructive against the Brumbies. He was Mr. Energizer Bunny last week. We're going to wait for more reports. I don't want to jump the gun here. Seems like a pretty serious injury he picked up. We're not hurting for outside backs in New Zealand, but damn, you'd love the services of Kini Naholo. He's been one of the form wingers all season. But for me, the most instrumental player was Ruben Love at 10. Since he has started playing at 10, these guys haven't dropped a game, and they were ridiculously good against the Brumbies last week in Canberra. Because we know that the Hurricanes can put the hurt on people at home, 57-10 at Sky Stadium against the Waratahs. When they click in Wellington, they're deadly. They just got a big scalp away from home. That's huge. And I just think that Ho Hepper, who's a good 10, but his kicking has let this team down at times. He's missed a couple of crucial kicks. Don't we all? But when you look at his overall percentages, low 60s for goal kicking, not enough for a team like the Hurricanes. They really need every point they can get. Ruben Love's been a difference maker at 10. Usually plays at fullback, moved him closer to the action. The distribution was great, the vision was great, but it was the kicking. The goal kicking was superb. But also there was one moment in this game where the Canes had penalty advantage. Quick as a flash, Ruben Love looks up, nails an inch-perfect crossfield kick, leads to a try. Just loving that heads-up play, that creativity. This guy's going to be in black. He'll be an All Black. I put out a little short this week asking if he could be the third choice number 10. Now, I don't think he's going to knock Beauden Barrett and Damien McKenzie off their perch anytime soon. Down the line, though, kid's young. He's getting better every year. He's creative. He's got spark. He's got vision. Why the hell not? Speaking of number 10s, did we feel that the absence of Damien McKenzie hurt the Chiefs? Well, obviously. He is their MVP. He was the best number 10 in the world, according to World Rugby. I'm not talking about myopic, one-eyed Kiwis. I'm saying World Rugby put him at number 10 in their World 15. He's a hell of a 10. They're not the same without him. And I've picked the Chiefs to win this whole thing. Now, if McKenzie is out injured, do I feel the same way? Not necessarily. I'm not saying they're a one-man team, but he is just that talisman. He is just that mercurial, magical individual that just brings everyone together. They just look so much better on attack. Sure, Cortez Aratama ran the show fairly well from 9. Jacob is a handy young 10. But with McKenzie missing, you get results like this. They'll be very disappointed. Now, I believe that the Chiefs are taking on the Crusaders very soon. Might be next weekend. Whoa, that's a big one. That's mouth-watering. The Crusaders have had a bye. They've been recharging, regrouping, getting everybody healthy. Talk about a top-of-the-table clash. That could be a 1v2 kind of game. We'll find out when we look at the standings later. Who you got for that one? That's going to be huge. Moving on, let's talk about the game that I watched last night. So awesome. Spare a thought for the Highlanders. Their playoff run is over. Has to be. Don't even think there's a mathematical chance anymore. They started celebrating a bit prematurely when they thought they had it sewed up in the 74th minute. But if you guys have been paying attention this season, I'm pretty sure you have been, you know that Moana Pacifica are the best second-half team in the comp. And that's what I looked at going into this game. There were two things. One was Highlanders are weak in the fourth quarter. Statistically, they scored the least points in the final quarter of the game. You put that up against Moana Pacifica, who have had some pretty rough, pretty bad first halves, but surge in the second half, surge in the final quarter. I thought that could be interesting. The other thing I looked at was that the Highlanders have been pretty weak with their ball protection in the rucks. Pretty damn weak. Kind of like bottom of the table statistics for protecting the ball, for turning over the ball. You know, people have eaten their lunch at the breakdown all year and up front in the scrum. So that worried me for them, because you have one of the best Lucy trios in the whole competition, spearheaded by Miracle Failangi and Ardie Savea. That did become an important factor as this game wore on. But look, you had Radamai Tavuki Neepkins just absolutely tearing it up as he usually does. He's had so many post-contact meters since he came back. Just lights up the field. And he scored a pretty fluky intercept try, but it did make you think, oh boy, the Highlanders are really up for this. Their season's on the line, and they were playing like it. But I mentioned that breakdown superiority, and a telling moment for me was just on the stroke of halftime. Those championship minutes, just before halftime, just after halftime, where Ardie Savea affected a really important turnover. Things got a bit loosey-goosey for the Highlanders. I think it was Ethan de Groot as playmaker flinging the ball out wide. It all got a bit messy. Ardie Savea was in there over the top, won a penalty for his team. Moana Pacifica kicks the goal. Not Pellegrini, by the way. He was on the bench. But that gave them a boost going into the break. Now, Pellegrini did come on after halftime, and that made you think, okay, it's really going to be a battle of the boot here. Pellegrini was kind of off with his goal kicking. Like, Moana Pacifica won, even though Pellegrini had a rare bad day at the office off the boot. But the person doing the kicking was Ardie Savea. He scored one of the greatest grubber tries I have ever seen in my life. This guy beautifully dinks the ball forward off his toe, and then he bounces it off his knee, keeping his hands and torso clear so it's not a knock-on. Sheer willpower, sheer skill. This guy is the man. This guy, who's almost at 100 caps for the All Blacks, he will go down as one of the greatest All Blacks of all time. And when you see form like this at super level, when he's so inspired, leading Moana Pacifica, when he's giving his heart and soul, when it's like he's playing for the All Blacks every week, that's how passionate he is. You have to think that this guy's just one of the GOATs. I mean, we're lucky to have him in New Zealand. He is the best player in Super Rugby Pacific. Fight me in the comments if you disagree. So his grubber try was insane. His brother Julian Savea came on. That was fun to see them running around out there. But look, it wasn't just the individual moments of brilliance that kind of surprised me. It was how structured the attack was from Moana Pacifica when they got into the red zone. They did lose a couple of turnovers themselves. Tava Nawai was a one-man band out there, getting turnovers all day. The best Highlander on the paddock. But even despite leaking a bit of ball, the attack was structured. You know, Moana Pacifica, they're not just doing this instinctive Pacific Islands brand of rugby. I really hate that. That's such outmoded thinking when you hear that. The Pacific Islands team can play with a lot of structure. The Pacific Island teams, you know. I've seen the Drua play with lots of structure. I've seen Moana Pacifica doing fundamental classic rugby well. Scoring off set piece. They can do it. So I was very pleased to see the disciplined way that they built phases when they got into the kill zone. Guys, they're in the top 6. We're going to look at the standings. I want this fairy tale to come true. I am manifesting that this is the story of Super Rugby 2025. Moana Pacifica go all the way to the playoffs. What happens from there, we'll see. They can do it, guys. They can absolutely do it. As long as Ardie Savea is fit, why not? And this game was crunched. They knocked the Highlanders out, but most importantly, they jumped up the table themselves. Let's finish off with this Aussie derby. Bit of a thumping, really. Brumbies snapped back to form. Corey Toole was brilliant, scored a couple tries. It just looked a little bit easy at times. Brumbies got around the Waratahs pretty well, but also beat them up front. Rolling maul looked good. Scrum was fairly handy. Made it look surprisingly easy. I mean, the Brumbies are real contenders here. There was some magic from Joseph Suali'i. He scored a close-range try off a rolling maul. Kind of stuck his head in a place that wingers and fullbacks shouldn't normally be, but his timing collecting that ball off the back of a rolling maul was pretty brilliant and just shows he's really getting his head back around the nuances of rugby union as opposed to rugby league where he tore the goddamn house down every week. Brumbies are in the mix. Brumbies are going to be there in the finals. Mark my words. They've had some big slip-ups, but, man, good resounding return to form here. So, look, overall, a bad week for the Aussies because the force went down to the Blues. Okay, so the Blues are still in the hunt. They're at 7, but they're not looking very inspiring. I talked a lot during the season. Who did I single out? The Hurricanes and the Force. I said watch them flip in the second half of the season. Force were always there in the top 6. I felt they were vulnerable once they started playing the Kiwi teams more often. That is what is happening. The Hurricanes have got that injection of All Black talent back. They've moved Ruben Love to 10. They are now at 5. Big turnaround from them. Let's see if they can ride Ruben Love all the way to the playoffs. Critical fixture next week. Chiefs versus Crusaders 1v2. That's going to be a really important one. That might determine who is top dog. But yes, the Aussies, after having 4 teams in the top 6, now have 2. The Kiwis are coming back. If you consider Moana Pacifica a Kiwi team, I guess they are stationed in North Auckland. But 3 or 4 New Zealand franchises, depending how you look at it. Who's dead and buried? Drua and Highlanders. They're not coming back. The Tars, man, you're starting to get into kind of mathematical territory here. They've just been too inconsistent. Blues could make a play at the top 6, but yeah, when they have a battle with Moana Pacifica, that's going to be huge. All right, guys, I will be back to preview the next round of Super Rugby. I'm also going to do a video looking at the Lion squad, which is about to be named. So much fun rugby coming up, Super Rugby and International. So I'll be back for another one real soon. You take it easy. Have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you later. Bye for now, guys. See ya.